Hello everyone. Welcome to the Freelancer Summit 2022, the second edition. And I'm happy, last year we had a smaller summit. We literally had 3 speakers, but this year we have about 25 speakers, and we're doing it for 2 days now. So this just, shows the growth and the interest that, we had from last year to this year. And by now, I'm sure Roger has given a brief and overview of what the summit is about. We're here to talk about freelancing, future of work in Africa and beyond. And there's no better way to do that than to talk to my brother here, Femi, who's in Nigeria. He's been doing amazing work in the startup funding ecosystem. So today he's here to talk about the topic, Africa startup and investor ecosystem. Welcome, brother.
Thank you so much, Tongai. It's a pleasure to join you here. And hello, everyone. Just a quick introduction. My name is Femi Awoniyi. I am a startup fund manager at Google for Startups Africa. I lead the Google Black Founders Fund in Africa program, which is a Google initiative to support Black-led businesses across the globe with the best of Google and non-dilutive funding. It's an absolute pleasure to join you here today for the Freelancers Summit 2022. I'd like to start off by giving a big thank you to the AfriBlocks team for putting together this amazing summit and inviting me to give a keynote speech on Africa's startup and investor ecosystem. So startup founders and freelancers have always had, I'd say, an interesting relationship. In fact, the other day, I was speaking with an early stage founder called Lola, who was engaging a freelance developer to possibly join her team. She shared that they had a nice conversation around the scope of work and the nature of work. And at the end of the chat, she asked the developer, well, this has all been nice and good, but what are your rates to kind of help us plan? And the developer said, well, that depends. What is your budget? And this started a long line of back and forth for 3 days, trying to get each other to say say a number first, And I know that, AfriBlock works hard to make sure interactions between startups and freelancers go as smoothly as possible. But, along this line, let's take a step back, when we think about interactions like this. These startup freelance engagements happen and will continue to happen because startups need the right talent to scale. Now, if you speak to most startups, they're focused on scaling quickly. And when you drill down into some of the challenges that they face when trying to scale, you'll find that getting access to the right talent is one of the top 2 challenges that they face when trying to scale. And I'm sure you're wondering, what's number 1? I'm sure a lot of you on the call already have an idea. It's access to funding, which is understandable because money is the lifeblood of any business. And getting that money to get the right talent and scale is absolutely essential. So in today's keynote, I'll be touching on these 2 sides, on the startup investor dynamic and then the startup freelance dynamic, to showcase why finding ways to coexist with one another is essential for the betterment of the African tech ecosystem. So let's take a minute to look at Africa's investor landscape, or the investment landscape as a whole, and see how we're doing as a continent. If you look at funding figures over the last couple of years, you'd actually see that there's a general trend of year-on-year growth when it comes to funding coming into Africa. In fact, according to Maxim Bayon's figures from last year, startups in Africa collectively raised $4.3 billion, over 2.5 times what was raised in 2020. And currently, we're actually on course to beat that record again. Now, this is absolutely great news. But when you look at Africa's funding figures and compare it to the wider global context, you'd actually see that funding to Africa accounts for less than 1% of the global VC funding last year. And although we are seeing encouraging signs, and they are encouraging, there's still a few challenges here and there like access to early stage funding, especially between 0 and 500K, is still a bit of a challenge for a lot of startups in Africa. So there are positives and there are negatives. These insights show us that we have a lot of potential in Africa, a lot of potential in our African tech ecosystem. But it also shows us that we're just getting started, really. And it's important for us to align with the positive trends that we're seeing within our ecosystem to contribute to its overall growth. So when we think of aligning with the trend that we're seeing at the moment, it then raises another interesting question. What do investors care about? What are some of the things that they look out for? And to answer the question in one line, investors care about return on investment, which is they give you money now, and at some point in the future, they get the money back with a little bit more as return. It's that simple. And there are different types of investors, from early stage angel investors to more mature venture capital firms. But primarily, you'll see that they're focused on return on investment, especially for for-profit investors, is just consistent, right? And a lot of people don't necessarily have as much visibility on the funding landscape as they would like. And this has led to quite a few misconceptions about investor funding. One of these misconceptions is actually that investors like to take big risks. So that I would say not necessarily, and I'll explain. Investors don't expect any company that they put money in to fail outright. Like I said, return on investment is their primary focus. But we are all stuck in a reality where, well, unfortunately, a majority of startups fail. And investors have got about a 1 in 10 chance of success when it comes to investing in startups. And they have to plan with that reality in mind. So investors typically look to invest in as many startups with serious growth potential as possible to cover the inevitable loss that they would make. So I'm sharing this bit of context because I think it's important that we try to take the mind of the investor, or at least understand their perspective when we're thinking of engaging with them and relating with them. Another misconception actually is that getting funded in A-list, widely known firms is the way to go. And again, I would say not necessarily, because having the biggest and most widely known VCs on your cap table is nice, but it's not necessarily the goal. What really matters is finding a funder who is the best fit for you from a value perspective, where your vision and your mission statement is well aligned with what they stand for. And also from a contribution to your business standpoint, where beyond the money, they're able to enable some partnerships for you, offer advisory, give you direction that goes beyond just providing capital. In my honest opinion, the best investors help you in both funding and non-funding ways. It's really all about finding the right fit. And this concept of finding the right fit is something you will hear quite a bit in the tech ecosystem as a whole. Finding the right fit from an investor standpoint, finding the right fit from a talent standpoint, and so on. But this right fit concept is actually very important when you're trying to scale, especially because of the niche nature of the tech ecosystem. But let's take a minute now to look at how the startup freelance dynamic works, and maybe what a good fit might look in that situation. Right? From a startup freelancer standpoint, finding the right fit can really work wonders for everybody involved. Freelancers get to build on their skills and gain exposure on really interesting projects while getting paid. On the other hand, startups are able to meet their business objectives and overall increase their earning potential. There's strong cases for win-win here. And startups have very different needs depending on their stage. And what you'll actually see is that freelancers are able to support, or different types of freelancers are able to support these startups at their different stages. From supporting early stage startups on their initial brand and marketing material like business cards and logos to supporting mature companies with their financial structuring when they're trying to raise. You see that across the board, you see these relationships between startups and freelancers. And if you think about it, it's actually no surprise the way Africa's gig economy and tech ecosystem is growing. We are statistically the youngest continent on the planet with a median age of roughly 25. Internet penetration is growing year on year. The pandemic accelerated tech adoption across Africa. Our continent is filled with highly skilled and passionate young individuals. There's this study by Pioneer with about 21,000 freelancers that show that Africa has about 10% of the world's freelancers today. This is an amazing statistic. But when you then take a closer look, the study also showed that freelancers reported 68 and 51% of their clients are in North America and Europe respectively, while only 7% reported having clients in Africa. Right? This, for me, shows that there's still quite a lot of work to be done. And a large contributor to this is the lack of suitable jobs back home, forcing talented folks like yourselves to take initiative and look to create their own opportunities externally. Platforms like AfriBlocks are doing amazing work to help with this drive, but I still think there's quite some work still to be done to drive more local startup freelance relationships to help build our ecosystem. We've seen impacts of freelance marketplaces in other clients. Like Upwork helps connect professionals to agencies globally, and in 2021 they supported over 700,000 gig workers, helping them earn over $3 billion in the process. Now imagine that impact, but back here at home. I look forward to a time where we have similar and even better impact numbers in Africa. Because one thing that remains undeniable is the potential that we have on the African continent. I dream of an African ecosystem with symbiotic relationships with investors, startups, and freelancers. A relationship filled with transparency and trust, where Lola, the founder I referenced earlier, is able to raise early stage funding without losing an arm and a leg. And she's able to build her startup while collaborating with thriving talent across Africa. There's so much that we can achieve together on this continent. We just need to be intentional about finding ways to collaborate. On a parting note, I'd like to share some words of advice for those of us here. For the freelancers, please ensure that you are learning and building on skills that are innovative and future-oriented. The tech ecosystem is a rapidly evolving space. I'll give you an example. I know a founder who built his platform on the AngularJS programming language, but he then had to learn Vue.js, a different language with some similarities, because AngularJS is no longer being supported. And as you'd imagine, this has also changed the direction he took with the freelancers he's working with. Right? It's so key to keep your hand on the pulse of latest innovations that are happening across the tech space. Just be mindful of what the latest trends are and make sure that you're closely aligned with what those are to ensure that you stay relevant. Google has a platform that actually helps with this. It's called Grow with Google. You can Google it. This platform provides training, tools, resources to help you grow your skills in an ever-evolving space. For the startups among us, my advice is to be proactive in driving connections with investors. The truth is, the investment space is very network-based and dependent on the connections you're able to make. So go out and be intentional about making yourself visible in the tech space. Whether this is tech events, seminars, what have you. Just make sure that you're being deliberate about building connections within the investor landscape and the wider tech ecosystem as a whole. Believe me, it does pay off over the long run. And in your engagements and outreach, you should also try to cut across a number of investor types. You have accelerators, like Seedstars, Y Combinator as an example, Techstars. You have angel investors, you have venture capitalist firms, Future Africa Ventures Platform, and so on and so forth. You also have NGOs and donor agencies that support, tech startups with grants and non-dilutive funding. These are some of the people you'd want to engage with and at least rub shoulders with to ensure that you're at least aware of the opportunities that the funding landscape has to offer, and you're then able to capitalize and evolve and build on from there. Another bit of advice for the startups, and I've seen this work wonders for a number of startups that I work with. Please speak with founders who have been through similar things that you are going through right now. I assure you this will do you a world of good, because at the very least, it will minimize the amount of mistakes you have to make on your own. You can just learn from someone else, right? And for others on the call who I have not mentioned, I would say let's find ways to collaborate with each other and catalyze our booming tech ecosystem to achieve the potential it can achieve. There's a famous quote I love. The best way to predict the future is to create it. So let's work together to create the African tech ecosystem that we want to see. We have the potential. Let's make it a reality. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today and joining you in this awesome summit. I look forward to seeing the incredible things you go on to do in Africa. Thank you and take care.
Thank you so much. That was super, informative. And I do like the point that you made around the fact that there are different types of investors. It's something that, I had to learn because you might be applying to, besides the fact that someone is only focuses on Series A or on seed stage, there's also the fact of the industry. Someone might just focus on ed tech, and then you are in food tech and you're applying to that person. And that's an automatic no, not because you don't have a great idea or you have a bad business, but because you just didn't do the research to say, is this their field? So that was a highlight for me. But thank you so much, Femi.
No problem.
I'm sure everyone else picked something super helpful for what they're building as well. Thanks a lot, and we're moving on to the next session. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tongai. Take care.